Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Awaken the World Live Sunday Talk. Nice to see everyone here today, including me. I can see myself on the screen. It's kind of fun, actually. Jennifer! Hello, Jennifer. Boy, it seems like we just talked that short time ago. It's funny how fast time flies by on a Sunday. And usually Sunday we try to keep things pretty light because the rest of the week is... You know, I gotta tell you, this whole retirement thing, what a load of crap. I tell you. 25 years of work, and there's more work now than there was before retirement. It's all a lie. The only difference is you don't get paid for most of it when you're retired. Well, I guess there's payment in different forms, right? Yeah, exactly. Yes, I have a wife who has a spirit animal that's a dodo bird. Best payment ever, really. Say, hon, what's up with your hair this afternoon? Maybe you could tell everyone. Kelly's hair is having some interesting things done to it. I actually color Kelly's hair for her. I do it with henna from India. Mix up the powder ourselves, a little bit of lemon juice, let it sit for a couple hours, and then I henna her hair, and she keeps it wrapped up like that all day. And then, yeah, it turns out really nice, actually. Yeah, I double as hairdresser when necessary. Hello, Cindy. How you doing? That's right. Yeah, I called everyone unilings. Okay, universelings instead of earthlings, and we're going to talk about that. But before we do, there's actually a couple questions to answer that came up. And keep in mind today that the way things work with me, the way my gift comes out is you have to ask me questions. So, you know, luckily Kelly has a lot of questions. So oftentimes the subject of video is, you know, coming directly out of something that she's asked me the day before. And that's great. Like I said, probably, you know, I used to say probably a couple hundred videos. Well, I think we're getting kind of near that now. So I'm going to say probably the rest of my lifetime of good videos. May I die soon. So actually, Cindy had asked a question, and I apologize I didn't get to it a little bit sooner. Cindy had said, if we go through this life awake or awakening, would we ever go through another life not awake? Do we start over or skip around as far as our awareness goes from life to life? Is there always a progression? Well, the answer is yes, no, and maybe. No, really. Yes, there is always a progression. Always a progression. No, you won't necessarily come into the next life and wake up in that life. That may not be the purpose. Your purpose may be to serve another in that life. You see, one of the things that we all have to come to grasp and understand is that the universal web of life, as I would call it, that sea of consciousness has created this incredibly beautiful, glowing, vibrational, crystalline, flowing, moving, morphing space in which we literally play. Like, it is so important to me that you understand that there is nothing that you cannot do that does not have meaning for you. There is no failure. There is no wrong decision. There is just growth, just evolution. And what appears in this land of Maya, in this physical illusion, what we perceive in our limited states of consciousness, and let me tell you, as long as we're still corporating a body, we are limited states of consciousness. In that egoic sense, we're limited. Many of the concepts that I'm trying to relay to you that I've had direct experience of are simply so beyond the abilities for language to communicate it. And that's why often in deep discussion about it, the feeling wells out, usually in the form of an emotional state. Because to speak about it is to only point in the direction. Yes, evolution consciously is always forward. It's always moving forward. Yes, it's quite capable that you can come back in another life asleep. And again, when we say we're coming back, we really have to understand the being that we are as a collective entity manifesting various egos. Because of course we are the size of the cosmos. We are not this limited form. We're just not. Those other egoic manifestations may receive vibrational information and think very similar to the way a lot of people do today, that they are the ones who've had the past life. It's not that way. You are taking part in a collective of past, future, now lives. And not just on this planet, in this space. And this is what it really comes down to. So with this question, you just have to let the mind flower just that little extra step. We may see a beggar living on a street corner for 40 years and never see the enlightened master who's waiting that 40 years to say the right thing to one single individual before dying of heart failure or alcohol poisoning or a drug addiction. It's too big to put into words. It's here we go. So I'm talking about that emotional state. It's just too magnificent. It's too much to contemplate within consciousness right now, because it will blow you away, as it does me every time. It really does. It's that big that to contemplate it on too long will bring you to tears. It just will. It's perfection personified, in the most perfect way to boot. And here I am, caught without my cloth. Found it. So, I hope that answers your question, Cindy. It really is beautiful, and despite what we may think we're going through, despite what our limited perceptions of what this universe and our existence is, it is so far grander than your grandest imagination. And we're all an everlasting part of it. And the awareness of it will come and does come. It's guaranteed. It's guaranteed. Yes, gorgeous. Did I mention that Kelly actually had the highest English marks out of her entire school? It's true. It's amazing to me. I'm always a stickler on precision with language, and the reason I've said that, of course, is that it's hard enough for us to communicate as it is. We have to be fairly precise in what we say. So, next question. Rachel had a question. Tips for becoming road rage resistant, please. And, this is a great one. Tip number 1, stop driving. Really. Stop driving. I mean, if you can stop driving, not only will you have no road rage, you will have a heck of a lot of extra money in your pocket. Tip number 2, drive slow. Don't be in a hurry, ever. If we're having road rage, it's usually because we're projecting into a future and that other vehicle is in our way. And here's the funny thing about that vehicle that's in our way. as with all beautiful things in this universe, and it is all truly beautiful, you never know if that vehicle that's in your way is slowing you down just enough for you to avoid getting T-boned by the semi and turned into a compact toaster with a slice of human sticking up out of it. We just don't know. Road rage is a function of an interstate, something that we are not dealing with, something that we're afraid to deal with, something that's causing anger to be generated. And we typically vent it on whatever's right in front of us, and other vehicles and drivers are an easy target. They really are. That is the best way to stop road rage, right there. 1, stop driving. 2, slow down. That's right, I do guarantee it. You know, I'll tell you, I went 5 years without driving in Vernon when I first came back to Canada before getting together with Kelly. And that's a whole other story because, you know, I lived my life out of a backpack, you know, for decades. And I met Kelly, and you've never seen so much stuff in your life. I mean, oh, it was nuts. During the grand disillusion of getting rid of most of it, I literally lost it. Like, there was a 20 cubic yard dumpster outside that was full to the brim. There had been 3 full moving vans worth of stuff taken out of the place. There had been 2 weeks of non-stop garage sales where I was practically giving stuff away. And then there were truckloads of stuff going to our local second-hand stores to the point that the one of them shut down taking donations for an entire month. It was insanity. It really was. It really was. Yeah, stuff wasn't all hers. That's true. Okay, on to the fun stuff, because we're gonna. So we've handled the important things here off to the side, and we're gonna get on to the fun stuff now. So let's first talk about the whole alien thing, because this is really interesting, you know. And Cindy brought up Nanu the other day, right? Mork and Mindy, awesome little show. Really had a great time with it. That was kind of like where you got to see Robin Williams. It was just great. I mean, I remember the way he used to sit on a chair. I remember the way he used to drink with his finger and then burp it after. And yeah, hey, look at that. There you go. Bent time. That's right. Time is quite flexible. Just make sure if you bend it, Cindy, you bend it back when you're done, okay? And, you know, I often tell people that I was hatched, and that's because I actually do have memory of an existence, and it's not my existence, it's part of the collective that I am part of, okay, manifested as a hatched being, as a being that came out whole. The full size, right off the bat. It wasn't that big of an egg, but it was a heck of a lot larger than the eggs we have around here. You know, it was about 4 feet from what I remember. But I was on the inside. It was really hard to tell. It was more about getting out of the egg. And here's the big thing. We're going to start right from the top. So what we have first is we have something called an alien. And now when we talk about the word alien, there's going to be all sorts of things that come up. And these days, it's little gray guys, it's spidery ones that crawl under your skin and get inside and control you. It's you know, seed pods that take you over. Symbiotic relationships with aliens. All these different sort of images will come up, along with the older images, right? Anything that doesn't look the way we do. Anything that doesn't appear to be human. or recognizable. We consider alien in some way. And what do we really mean when we're saying alien? Well, the word, it comes out of not a very nice place, of course, because it involves alienating. It involves separating. It involves saying this is different. And on its surface, it appears different, of course. But one of these days, when one of the many unidentified flying objects that are visiting our planet on a daily basis decides to stop and sit around for a while and maybe come down for a little bit of a visit when we're ready, what are we going to do? We are going to separate ourselves. Many of us are going to separate ourselves, us and them again. Alien. To be alienated, to be separated from. This is exactly the sort of thing which will allow fear to take over and a negative response. And this is one of the many reasons why there is not an massive appearance of a fleet of ships. It's because of our maturity, okay? It cannot be any other way right now. In our state of maturity, the governments of the world, the militaries of the world would seek to cause chaos and harm. And this cannot be. And it doesn't need to be. We need to understand exactly what is going on in the universe and our place in that. And we could take the word alien and just chuck it right out the door. You see, you cannot go anywhere in this universe or run into a single being that isn't part of that sea of consciousness. You cannot go anywhere and find a single being that is not made up of the same stuff as the rest of creation, that is not born out of star matter, not born out of that original material, coupled with consciousness on its own path, its own expression, looking back upon its version of the divine. And we, in our little tiny-minded state, we look fearfully to the skies a lot of times. We look fearfully to the difference, as we do in ourselves and each other. You know, there's a little boy living down the road. His name is Eli, and he is 5 years old. 5 years old, and he was born with numerous conditions. He still has seizures, and he has severely deformed skull, and his face has had to be reconstructed, and he doesn't have tear ducts, so he's had artificial ones put in. And I love that little kid. Whenever I'm out there, he'll come roaring up, Garen, I want to tell you something, and we'll talk, and he'll communicate with me, and I always touch him. I always make sure he understands, right? That there's no separation. And that's the part that breaks me up, about that little kid, is I see a world where, because of the way he looks, because of the genetic issues and the disease issues that he faces, that he is going to be subject to ridicule, fear, scorn, even hatred, all over the way he looks. And yet, that's God. In every way, that's God. That's God Every way. Sorry. He hit another soft spot with me. I can be a tiger about a lot of things, but when it comes to innocence, that's my linchpin. So let's get back on some of this about the alien, and that'll get me off that subject. We do this with ourselves, and as I said, this will happen to this little boy named Eli. He's a beautiful little kid. And it will happen when aliens reveal themselves to the general public on a very real basis. And that's why it has not occurred yet. We need to reach a state of consciousness, and we need to do it quickly, in which we can facilitate the help that is waiting for us. Now, a lot of people say, well, why don't they just show up and hand us the answers? And I would ask you to equate that to what happens when you hand a child every toy he wants and just give him things without seeing some level of responsibility, some level of awareness, some level of maturity before you hand over the toy. Up to date, the only thing that's really kept us from destroying ourselves is the fact that we're either too afraid to use what we've created, or we're too worried about our personal survival. And when I say our, I'm talking about the individuals who would use such technology. If you gave them unlimited power, access to unlimited power, we already have ego running amok. Can you imagine unlimited ego tied to unlimited power? And it does bear a very real conversation about other species who come here and what state would they be in. And is it fair to say that an advanced culture that would come here would look upon us and not want to take advantage of us? Well, I would say again, let's look to our own behavior. You see, self-awareness and growing past this sort of mindset is the same journey everywhere in the universe. And it appears frightening on the surface. I understand that. And I think the reason you say frightening, Cindy, is because you're talking about, well, if they're anything like us, if aliens are anything like we behave, and let's stop using the word alien, because you know what? They're not. If our brothers and sisters in this universe behave anything in the way that we historically have shown we're capable of, we could be in a lot of trouble. I.e., the Spanish conquistadors coming into the Mayan Empire, in through Guatemala, for example. The British, the Americans. Yeah, referring to, yeah, exactly, hey? There is not a power on the planet that has not sought to subdue what it saw was a weaker or lesser people, and subdue it through violence and fear and intimidation. Is there a chance that this would happen to us as a planet? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a very real chance, as a matter of fact. Realistically, you have to understand that we as a what we would call the human race, we do not own this planet. This is not planet Earth. This planet was named billions of years before we ever showed up. And we didn't just magically appear here by chance, okay? We didn't. We are all, in effect, aliens. All of us. There's not a single one of us here that is native to this world. That can say with any reality at all that, well, I'm born here, this is my planet. The arrogance of such a statement. Just as arrogant as thinking we can actually own things, and that we could own land or own our solar system or own our sun. These are all words of ego writ large. All of creation, every species across the universe is participating in this dance, in this creative, expressive growth in consciousness. There are a number of species out there who have grown past the dangerous period where technology and ego has superseded common sense and wisdom, and made it to a point where their own higher evolved understanding of life and of the journey of another species would allow them to help. And as a matter of fact, overtures have been made. And anytime we try to pull something off that's really dangerous, the eyes come down and take a look, just to make sure we're really not going to do ourselves in. My point is this: your path of conscious awareness never started nor ends with planet Earth. You would be under the false misconception that Christ, for example, was a human being. He was as alien as I am, and as alien as you are. We have species of jellyfish floating around in our depths that bear DNA, again, that makes no sense to have it here. It just doesn't. Now, the only alternative is that you honestly believe that a meteor dropped out of the sky and landed in the right spot in the right warm water, and these little itty-bitty squiggly things managed to come alive off of it after a couple million years, and over time and trial and error, bing, bam, boom, suddenly you get a human being. When everything prior took millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of years. And we know that, the stretch between a silverback gorilla or a chimpanzee actually is even a better example. Actually, there's a better one yet. Baboon. A lot of our DNA could be traced into baboon DNA. Right? Monkeys on trees. Although a baboon is not a monkey, it's a baboon. Labels, labels, labels. Are we to believe that? Does it make sense that we actually have a number of cousin species that do not fall into the class of human being on this planet, of which Neanderthal is only one? Of the over 30 cousin species. And you see, the funny thing is we have a good track record of where all the other ones sort of developed from. And none of them really made it. But what we would call Homo sapien, we literally, if we're to believe our evolution, dropped out of a tree. Hatched, whole. Ready to go. That was not the case. We are an engineered being in every way. Our consciousness, that which we are, has been continuing and continually recycling itself since the dawn of creation, and will until the dissolution of all creation, and then will burst forth again in another joyous manifestation of what we would call a universe. The most poetic way is found in the Hindu text, of course, the in-breath and out-breath of God, the inhalation and exhalation of the universe itself. There is not a single member of our species that is unique from the idea that Earth belongs to them. It does not. I have to be clear about this. Our planet was known about, used, populated, and named at least 1 billion years before the first hint of any sort of intelligent creature appeared here. Okay, we came here. We came here for the experience on all levels, both as a consciousness energy and as a physical creation. Planet Earth, it was not the first step. And it won't be the last step. You have to get out of the box. I have conscious memories of other species. And even though sometimes the interface doesn't work properly, there's not a lot sometimes that could be recognized. The one thing that I can recognize is the existence of consciousness, of self-awareness. Everything in all of creation is moving, inching towards greater and greater states of self-awareness. Whether it be that tiny subatomic particle that gets into harmony with another particle that entangles itself with it, whether it be ourselves entangling ourselves with others, all of creation works in this direction. The earth itself is part of that consciousness project. She represents a type of consciousness all in herself. And to think that we could ever own her or have rights to her. She has been here for 4.3 billion years. Are we that naive to think that all this time was just for us? Right here, right now, the last million years? And at the rate we're going, maybe another couple hundred if we're lucky. Couple hundred years, not a couple 100 million years. You know, human centricity, okay, the idea of this human... You know, go back to the days of Copernicus, okay, and the big problem was that the world was at the center of everything. Nowadays, well, humans are at the center of everything. It's not the world anymore, it's us. It's humans. Everything has to be based upon and revolve around humans. I am not human. And you aren't either if you pay close attention. Have you ever looked at the stages a baby goes through? You metamorphose through all of the stages that have been represented here on the earth. You know, you go through the aquatic, you go through the reptilian, into the mammalian stage. And, you know, you hit that insect stage too, because by the time you're 2 years old, you're all buzzing around all over the planet, running your little legs off. that human embryo, that process is indicative of the spiritual realm as well, indicative of all life itself. Not life in how we manufacture life in this physical realm, but life, of which this physical realm is an expression of. You know, the concept that we put on life is that it's this limited tiny thing that we are experiencing, that it's happening to us, and it's not. This universe is simply an expression of life, of a grand life that is far more than we can get a grip on. And every stage is necessary, and the reptilian stage. Cindy said she's wondering about that reptilian stage. Okay, this is what happens. The reptilian brain is the control center. It is that base of the brain stem, the reptilian brain remnant that we still have, okay? And that is literally the control center. You really need it. It also serves as sort of a body broadcast receiver, okay? The energetic manifestation that you are, it is receiving that energy right into that old reptilian brain place. And that is where all the autonomic responses come from. That is where that intelligent space comes from. We've been too convinced by people, about, you got to worry about aliens, and you have to worry about the reptilian aliens. Why? Because they don't look like us. Because they look mean and nasty. Have you ever looked at a crocodile? They do not look pretty. What? I've had a crocodile almost purring like a kitten, getting its underneath its chin getting scratched. Now, granted, he was only about 2 feet long, and he was in a really good mood. The point is this: our fears manifested outwards into all these different forms, okay? All these different imaginations of our fears. All these different variants of our fears. And the power and control structure on this planet would use that. Would use that fear. Would use that to unite us, not in a way that would bring about what it is that we need, and that is as a conscious spiritual awareness, an awakening of epic proportions on the planet. It would instead unite us one against another again. Except now it's global control, and not enlightened global control, not the resource-based economy, but an economy based more and more upon an industrial war machine that now has to stretch out into space. No, I've actually seen Prometheus, and the DNA dropped into the river, exactly. Well, actually, he doesn't actually drop the DNA into the river. What he does is he ingests that core biological material, and it interacts with his humanoid DNA and breaks him down in the process and reassembles new, what would have been ribonucleic chains of DNA, okay, which would be actually a mix of the two. And since his was the dominant strain, human beings came out humanoid. Whereas if you look further on in the movie, and the movie that Cindy's talking about is actually a very good movie. Believe it or not, it's actually part of the Alien series that had Sigourney Weaver in it, except this one focuses on the how did that planet get that way? The one that they ran into, that moon that they ran into, okay? So it's set back way back in time, early, when this is actually the first long-range deep space exploration financed by this ultra-rich trillionaire who was actually interested in preserving himself. But, that's not really part of the story so much. The real part of the story, of course, is that these aliens had gone all over the known galaxy, at least, introducing this substance, this particular base genetic material, along with selected other species to see what happened. And lo and behold, humanoids that we would call humans were born. Of course, when mixed with some other species, eventually you received the alien result. The big, nasty, double-mouthed teeth guy that Sigourney Weaver had to fight. And, there is a level of truth to it. I mean, our genetic structure, there's a gap missing between, and the time period just doesn't line up. I mean, our evolution has been relatively consistent, and yes, you do have large leaps forward, but we are not talking about a leap forward in a certain capacity. We are talking about a huge leap forward in the complexity of the organism. Our brain's complexity literally jumped through millions of years of evolution virtually within a couple thousand years. That did not happen naturally. It happened through direct manipulation. And that manipulation, the most easiest manipulation, of course, is interbreeding. It doesn't take a lot. The Bible speaks of this. And in the Old Testament, the Bible talks about when the sons of heaven looked upon the human women, and they thought, hey, kind of sexy, right? Like a little bit smaller versions of ourselves. Easier to control, maybe. And the sons of heaven, okay, what a lot of people said, well, they were angels. Really? Angels didn't have any body parts. We already figured that one out. That they were not. These so-called sons of heaven, were the alien crew that descended out of Ezekiel's wheel or some other similar shaped craft, came down, whatever they were after, gold, just visiting to check up, teach a little bit about building and agriculture maybe, give us a push in the right direction. And, it would have only taken 40 or 50 of the crew out having a wild night out on humans. Some of them would have even married, and there would have been offspring. And those offspring were known to be giants. Now, when we say giant and we look at the Hebrew for giant, we're talking not like giant, huge men, although some of them were quite large, but we're talking about giant in their capacities. Right? A giant in intellect, a giant in strength, giant in wisdom, and yes, some of them were quite large. And from that springs what we would call our modern day human being. A mix, a genetic cross. Partly from here, partly not from here. And the part from here is not an original part from here either. And you don't have to believe me on this. That's okay. That's really not the point. But I can tell you this. One of these days, in a couple thousand years, a human being is going to get a genetic sample from the other side of the galaxy, and they're going to find similarities in it. And then you're all going to understand. We really are stardust. We as carbon-based life forms, carbon is what's left over after the stars combusted all its material. That's what we are fashioned from. We are literally made out of clay, made out of ashes. Fashioned by what? By consciousness. And that consciousness is unlimited in its possibilities. And we are as alien as anyone who shows up here will be. We really are. Exactly. Mutts, mixed breeds, curs. On this galactic comedy soap opera that we would call humanity. And I got to admit, when I first pieced that together, I thought the same way. It's like, well, we're all pretty much mutts, Heinz 57. And there's a beauty in that, okay? I mean, take the arrogant, I'm a human top of the food chain goggles off. And understand what you really are, okay? You are essentially cattle, and your shepherds came down and got a little bit sick one night with you, and humans are the eventual output of that. And here's the awesome, and again, this is why I say, God's got such a sense of humor. In that, there's a perfection. In that, there's a chance for evolution, a chance for growth. A chance for raising consciousness, for new awareness, for a new expression of life. Yeah, exactly. Always my favorites at the rescue shelter. And again, we have to move beyond all of that matter and go to the mind stuff, that energy, that consciousness. If you really want to talk about alien communication, if you really want to talk about communicating with higher beings are listening all the time. And I'm not just talking about disincorporated energetic forms. I'm also talking about material forms of higher beings. And these beings are not harmful, and they cannot control you, and they cannot possess you. But you, in your right state of mind, can easily communicate with them. And they can communicate with you, and they can appear to you. And those beings are just as much from here and not from here as you are from here and not from here. And you've been around just as long as they have, except they're far more aware of the being aroundness that they've been through than you are. And what it comes down to is a state of mind, a state of consciousness. The energy vibrational state that we exhibit is lending our reality. It is rendering that reality to us. Kelly used to tell me a story when she was young that she would see little fairies, or maybe they were brownies, dancing on the doorknob. And all she can remember is one day she stopped seeing them. And I don't know about you, but I think if we all think back when we were kids, we all remember, for me it was forest elves. I used to spend a lot of time in the woods, and there was always these little forest elves around when I was a kid. And then one day you stopped seeing them and you didn't really make the connection. Our vibrational states had become a little too infected with that coarse vibration of ego setting in. We had lost the vibrational state of being that allowed us to see a larger view of what was really in front of us. These same beings that we would call elves and wood nymphs and other creatures like that are available to us now, and they are as much part of us and part of the collective whole of the sea of creation, okay, that sea of consciousness, as any other part of it is, just as valuable. And they can be communicated with. We can learn to see them again, and it all comes down to raising your consciousness. When you raise your consciousness enough, when you work on actively manipulating the energy of your being, and it is not the energy within your being, it is the energy that radiates from your being, that is literally creating a vibrational field around you that other people impact upon and are impacted by. And this vibrational field extends far beyond where you would think. It's not limited to 1 or 2 feet. The average person with a little bit of practice can easily feel that up to about 30 feet away, and you will actually feel that. I so wish our days could be filled with this type of discussion. Learning, awakening in place of wars, hate, killing. Stormy Daniels. Oh, jeez. I know, hey? Yeah, that about trumps everything. Ah, crap. I said his name. He's not going to appear, is he? Cindy, you're absolutely right, and I wish our days could all be filled with this too. And really, it's going to take that conscious awareness. It's going to take that awakening. It's going to take that understanding. And, it only takes 500 million of us. And if we can just get 500 million souls together, if we can just recruit 500 million people, if we put them on the right places across the planet, we can wake up the whole globe. And there are so many beings who are wishing us so well and are waiting on the sidelines to help us. Honestly, Earth is going to become a great trading port once we get our collective act together. But honestly, right now, we cannot have a mass visitation. We just can't. Humanity's not ready for it. And all I can say is this, is there are more than a few people here who are specifically watching and waiting for the signs that we are ready. And when that happens, help will be available. If we can not take ourselves out, if we can raise our consciousness, if we can move ourselves past this precipice, there is a magnificent future waiting for all of us. But it's going to take understanding that we are brothers and sisters, that every single one of us is valuable, that if there is one of us left out, then we have failed to look after the whole, that one, of which we are a part of. Learning to manipulate energy, learning to change the vibrational nature of your space begins with meditation. It begins with allowing the field of what you are to expand naturally, to get outside of the box, to take the wondrousness of the realization that there is an entire universe open to play in. Not just a planet, but an entire universe to experience. And, for me, it all starts with kids like Eli, that little kid, right? Or the puppy that's rescued from the shelter, or brought to the shelter and kept from harm, and then taken to a new loving home. Our expression of what we wish to see manifest in our universe begins and ends with every conscious act. Every one of them. It starts there, it ends there. I think that's where we're going to wrap it up for today. Much love and namaste to you all. I hope this has been a good discussion and a little bit of awareness awakening discussion when it comes to what we are. And incidentally, it is not just the Bible, but every single major spiritual tome, including the Vedas. For example, pick up the Mahabharata. There's many beautiful English versions there, and there are literally galactic wars happening over the earth at the time, described in perfect detail. Yeah, I can't believe. Yeah, thank you for shutting up. That's what she really means. Stop talking. Much love to you all. Have a wonderful Sunday. Lots of new videos coming up next week. Ask the questions when you need, and we're here to help whenever you need us to. And of course, if you need to speak to us in private, send us a message. We'll make time. Take care.